What's up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 12 of the Flying Knee KO podcast. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we are going to be discussing the various events that occurred at last weekend's UFC Fight Night in Abu Dhabi. UFC is still in Fight Island, and this fight card was actually headlined by the bantamweights, Cory Sandhagen versus Marlon Moraes. What a heck of a main event it was. Can't wait to break it down for you in the next couple of segments. But I hope everybody's doing well. Just wanted to kind of throw out one of those quick little notes. I'm a big basketball fan, so if any of you guys are Laker fans, congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers. My goodness, I've been waiting for them to have another championship. I've been a fan since the 2000s when they first won with Kobe and Shaq. So it was just so exciting to see LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Alex Caruso, Kuzma, all those guys contribute to another championship in what was really the longest NBA season of all time. It will be remembered forever, the NBA bubble, and one team came out on top. So, still congratulations to the Miami Heat for, winning the Eastern Conference and making it to the NBA Finals. But it was just a great weekend for me, not only watching some UFC, but also watching my favorite team in basketball win a championship. So just wanted to throw that out there. I'm a big basketball fan, as well as a UFC fan as well. But just want to throw that out there just in case any of you guys also watch any basketball. So the Lakers are now the 2020 NBA champions, and I cannot wait to see them back on the court again. But besides watching the Lakers over the weekend, I watched some UFC fights as well. And again, something is going on with these UFC fight cards. I was, saying in last week's episode, in episode 11, if you guys haven't checked it out, go to my YouTube channel and check that one out where we kind of discuss Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. But I was mentioning that usually the pay-per-views after, or not the pay-per-views, but really the fight cards after a pay-per-view, they typically dip down a little bit. They don't put as many good fights, or the results aren't really what fans expect. But my goodness, first Holly Holm and the Aldana fight card was great action. 3 straight finishes to start off the card. And then you had a great dominant performance by Holly Holm. And now this one, you have 2 bantamweights that are fighting to keep their ranking. Well, one is Marlon Moraes, who has the number 1 ranking in the bantamweight division. With one more win, he can for sure get a title shot. And you have Cory Sandhagen, who was undefeated. He ended up losing his last matchup against Aljamain Sterling, who is now set up to fight the champion in Petr Yan in the bantamweight division. But 2 of these guys, they're just going to have to face off, and one of them was going to either get an inch closer to fighting for the title, and another guy was just going to drop down the rankings and have to work their way back up. So we're going to discuss that, as well as other fights that excited me in the various different segments that we cover here in the Flying Knee KO podcast. So if this is your first time coming in and listening, hope you guys enjoy it. Again, I really just do these to talk about one of my favorite sports really that I've enjoyed, not just during this quarantine time, but really for the last 5 years I've been watching UFC. Primarily, I've tried to watch Bellator, any other MMA, organization, but UFC is the primary one I watch. So hope you guys enjoy the listen. We're just going to break down different items and different stuff from this previous Fight Night card, and hope you guys enjoy it. So let's go ahead and jump into the first segment, which I like to call
Amir with the winner, Derek Lewis. Derek, why'd you take your pants off? My balls was hot. I understand.
Derek Lewis saying my balls were hot, and what this segment really represents is hot balls translating into hot news. What's the items that we need to pick out from this past UFC Fight Night that was just coming out hot? Everybody was talking about it. So let's just jump into it. It had to have been the main event between Marlon Moraes versus Cory Sandhagen. I kind of prefaced it in my little intro right there before we got into the segment, but it's really a battle between 2 guys that do not want to give up their position. Cory Sandhagen, like I mentioned earlier, suffered his first loss, and he's just trying to build it back up, bounce right back, and have a nice rebound fight. While as Marlon Moraes ended up getting a victory in his last matchup against Jose Aldo, and instead of him getting a title shot, it actually ended up being Jose Aldo. It was a very controversial fight. A lot of the judges ended up choosing Marlon Moraes to get the victory, but the fans thought that Jose Aldo won. Could have had a factor in that as well, but that's already the past. These guys did not go all 5 rounds. I'm just going to say it out right from the bat. It was a great round and a half that they faced off, and it ended up getting finished early by Cory It's the Sandman Sandhagen. My goodness, this guy. There's some fighters that, they have that mentality where after they suffer their first loss, not only just a loss, but their first loss of their career, you don't know how they're going to rebound. Some guys just either suffer some type of, not even like PTSD, but more of like they get gun shy. They don't know if they should be changing up everything. Should they get new coaches? Should they get, something different in their training camp? Yeah, an example I can mention is, Francis Ngannou lost against Stipe Miocic. And then the fight after that, fought against Derek Lewis, didn't throw one significant strike. He just seemed like he was just very worried about getting knocked out. And his performance just kind of dipped. Now, we see a Francis Ngannou now, and he is the scariest man on the planet. So that's the kind of same approach that I was thinking that was going to try to affect Cory Sandhagen. How is he going to come out with his mentality? Is he going to be a little bit more cautious? Doesn't want to get caught on the ground. Even though he's very good on the ground, he faced off against a black belt in jiu-jitsu in Aljamain Sterling. So how is he going to do against Marlon Moraes, who is not only skilled on his feet, but he's also skilled on the ground? And it seemed like he was not phased at all from that loss against Aljamain Sterling, because he was just blitzing in, had some nice body kicks, threw some nice uppercuts that landed on Marlon Moraes. And Marlon Moraes was not playing around either. He was just absorbing those shots and throwing his nice little overhand rights that were clipping Cory Sandhagen. His best punch was a spinning back fist with his right hand that just wiped right off the right side of Cory Sandhagen's face. You could see it was marked up during the end of the first round in that corner break. You could see the right side of Cory Sandhagen was all red. And you see the damage that Marlon Moraes provides. And even though he's only 135 pounds, he cuts a lot of weight just to make it. So all that strength just ends up getting built into that body of Marlon Moraes. So that first round, very close between two fighters. Second round came in. And again, same thing. Marlon Moraes landing his nice body shots, nice shots to the top of the head. And then you see a nice question mark kick that lands by Cory Sandhagen. I believe it was the left leg. Nice little question mark kick. Hits the right side of Marlon Moraes. And you immediately see a welt starting to form under the right eye of Marlon Moraes. And I think you can even hear it if you rewatch the fight. Cory Sandhagen even mentions it, like just talking to Marlon Moraes, like, your orbital's broken. Your orbital's broken, and mentioning his orbital bone in his right eye. And it's just, he says that, he's seen that happen to some of his training partners. Cory Sandhagen does when he was training for different types of fights. He knows what an orbital break looks like, and he just thought that, Marlon Moraes had it. But, Moraes being a tough competitor, that didn't faze him. And then all of a sudden, you just see Sandhagen kind of throw out a few kicks, nice little calf kick, leg kick. And then he just sets up for a nice spinning heel kick. And you could just see Marlon Moraes' hands just not get high enough to his head as basically the calf of Cory Sandhagen catches the dome of Marlon Moraes. It immediately stuns Marlon Moraes. He falls backward, kind of ends up rolling. I don't know if he did that intentionally, but as soon as he kind of rolls onto his back, Sandhagen is already in top position, landing some ground and pound, clean shots. Marlon Moraes did not have enough time to defend himself, and the referee immediately stopped the fight. It was a beautiful, beautiful spinning heel kick that completely stunned Marlon Moraes, and he just had nowhere to go right there. And that is going to do it for Cory Sandhagen. He now, and in my eyes, and hopefully in the eyes of the UFC, has taken that number 1 ranking in the bantamweight division. Yes, he is now that much closer to a title shot. Is he next? He is not. We will be discussing that in a later segment. But again, just wanted to highlight the ability of the Sandman, Cory Sandhagen. Again, showing off that not only is he a tough competitor, but he has a tough mentality, knowing that, hey, I just suffered my first loss. It's all good. That's behind me. I completely forgot about that. And now it's a new challenge. Now it's trying to figure out how to keep this ranking and just get one more win. If he can get one more win in the near future, that win catapults him to the title shot. There's no question. So now it's just going to determine who that next opponent is. We'll talk about who his next opponent might be in the last segment of the Flying Knee KO podcast. Now, I would love to say that, you know what? Oh my goodness, that spinning heel kick TKO was a thing of beauty. I can say that it was the best knockout of the night, but it wasn't. And you're thinking, how is that even possible? How can a spinning heel kick TKO not be the best KO of the night? Well, that honor actually goes to Joaquin Buckley. My goodness, this man stole the show in the prelim. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys have not seen this knockout by Joaquin Buckley, please stop listening right now. Come back. Please come back to listen to the rest of the podcast. But please stop listening now. Go to Instagram. Go to YouTube. Wherever you kind of watch these different types of videos, type in Joaquin Buckley, and you're going to see one of the most insane knockouts of all time. I'm already saying it. I mean, it is one of the greatest knockouts of all time. It's for sure KO of the year. People are already going to include that in the list. This one is it's going to be very tough for any other fighter to try to top this knockout by Joaquin Buckley. He was facing off against Impa Kasanganay and in the prelims, so he wasn't on the main card, but going into the second round, he ends up throwing a leg kick that gets caught by Impa. And instead of trying to pull the leg away, what Buckley does is he basically on one leg, and it ends up being the right leg that's on the floor, ends up using that momentum to spin and throw a nice heel kick that lands right on the chin of Impa. And oh my goodness, this man's eyes rolled back and he just completely collapsed to the canvas. It was a unbelievable KO that nobody saw it coming. You see Paul Felder, you see Dan Hardy get out of their seats, the commentators, and they were just blown away because, again, the balance that it took Buckley on one foot, and that same foot that he was using to balance, to use the torque to build up momentum, and then throw the kick. It's just unbelievable. Those are those 1 in a million types of knockouts that you're probably never going to see again. And it was just such an awesome thing to watch. Congratulations to Joaquin Buckley for the victory. But again, he's probably going to be recognized a lot more because that video is going to be shown. It's already gone viral on Instagram, on YouTube, anywhere. It's just so quick, but it's already gotten edited. It's just like, it's unbelievable the way that he was able to pull that spinning heel kick off. One of the most beautiful things, and it's art, man. It's just crazy how, a lot of people think it's just super violent, and it is, but it's the art. It's poetry in motion. You see that thing in slow motion. It's just unbelievable how amazing that kick was. But I wanted to shout out Joaquin Buckley. He deserves a spot in the hot news of this past Saturday in this first segment of the Flying Knee KO podcast. All right, I've done enough talking for the first segment. Let's jump into the second segment where we try to discuss what the best matchup was or what the best fight was of this past Saturday's Fight Night card. In the segment that I like to call...
Let me bang, man! I want to do that, man. I do.
Julian Lane saying, "Let me bang, bro." So these two guys or girls who are just banging it out in the cage, a barn burner of a fight. I ended up going with the heavyweights that fought on the main card. That's right, it was Ben Rothwell versus Marcin Tybura. My goodness, these guys started off so damn good. Ben Rothwell has this very strange kind of, he can fight both stances. He fights orthodox, he can fight southpaw, but his stance is so square that his feet aren't really, his body isn't kind of framed to the side. Instead, it's just kind of very square to his opponent. And you would think that that'd be a very big disadvantage, but he has compiled so many victories in his MMA career that it just works for him. And he started off that first round very well, landed about 30 or more significant strikes on Tybura, and he was just landing these nice combinations, these nice uppercuts. He was in control in that first round, and all of his punches were kind of landing in between the guard of Tybura. But that didn't faze Tybura, the younger fighter. He had his moments in the first round as well, trying to land that lead jab, which had some success. And then in the second round, Tybura ended up picking up the volume, ended up throwing a few more combinations, and then his shots actually started stinging Rothwell more. Rothwell would land a few punches in that first round, but it didn't faze Tybura. He didn't push back or start kind of walking backwards towards the cage. Instead, Tybura kept walking forward. And in this case, in the second round, Tybura started throwing these lead jabs that just stung Rothwell, and Rothwell would kind of have to move a little bit back. Didn't want to feel that again, and then get cracked again in the nose with another lead jab. And what that lead jab ended up helping out with Tybura was it ended up helping him set up his other punches. It ended up setting up nice little uppercuts, a straight right that ended up hurting Rothwell in that second round. And then some overhand rights as well. And everything just started working all because of that lead jab. It's just so important to have a strong lead jab that can, at least again, set up your combinations when you're facing off against a tough fighter like Ben Rothwell. And also, again, like I mentioned, that frame of Rothwell probably gave Tybura a good frame of reference of, okay, know where he is. He's not going to try to move. Even with his good head movement, he's always going to be square and right up against me. And then that third round came, and Tybura ended up changing everything, throwing a bunch of strikes. We hadn't seen a takedown, and we finally saw one in the third round. Tybura gets Ben Rothwell down, had about a minute and a half or 2 minutes of top position, where he just landed some nasty ground and pound, including some elbows that ended up opening up a cut on Rothwell's face, and he just completely took over that third round. Judges saw it the same way as Marcin Tybura got the victory. But again, it was a great matchup between Ben Rothwell and Tybura. Very back and forth. Even though Tybura got that takedown in the third round, up to that point, they each had won one round. So it's still very great matchup and very quick. And a lot of energy between these two heavyweights. Typically, we see heavyweights and they try to gas out. But now we're kind of starting to see a little bit of an evolution for these heavyweights that can at least have somewhat of a gas tank and can still be technical as well. So congratulations to, obviously, Marcin Tybura, but to both guys, Ben Rothwell and Marcin Tybura, for being featured in this Let Me Bang Bro segment. All right, now I want to move on to the next segment where we're going to highlight a fighter and their performance where we weren't surprised by what they did in the cage. They met our expectations. And that segment is actually called...
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Nate Diaz is not surprised, and there was one fighter that we were not surprised of in last weekend's UFC Fight Night, and that fighter was Edson Barboza, the new 145-pound fighter. He recently moved down. This is actually barely his second fight at this weight class, and he faced off against Makwan Amerikani, and oh man, you can already see that these two guys, very skilled strikers. So I was very curious to see how Amerikani was going to battle and defend against those quick twitch leg kicks of Edson Barboza. I mean, some of the quickest leg kicks you have ever seen in the UFC, and I don't think anybody has any quicker leg kicks than he does. He just immediately snaps that leg, and it just either, you don't even know where it's going. Is it going to the head? Is it going to the body? Is it going to your calf kick? No matter where it's going to go, it's going to hurt. And that's exactly what he was able to implement last Saturday was a Barboza. He threw some nice body kicks in that first round and also had some really great takedown defense. And then the fact that he's moving down from 155 to 145, you can still see how muscular and how jacked his body is. And he's just been able to translate that strength. So now imagine having to out-wrestle and take down, use his takedown defense against 155 pounders. Now having to do that against 145 pounds, I mean, it's going to be even easier for him to not get taken down as easily. So he neutralized a lot of what Amerikani wanted to do. It seemed like Amerikani wanted to kind of, again, bring the fight to the ground and neutralize the strikes of Barboza, especially with his legs. So, very competitive first round. Barboza seemed like the little bit more active fighter as Amerikani was, again, trying to download as much data as he could on Barboza and trying to time those kicks. Second round came, and that's when it all changed. Barboza, no lead up, no lead jab to help him, just went straight right, boom, cracked the jaw of Amerikani and immediately knocked him down. And you could see Amerikani, again, kind of puzzled at that punch. He didn't even see it coming. He ended up kind of regaining his momentum, got back on his feet, and a few minutes later, same punch lands again flush on the chin of Amerikani and knocks him down again. And then Barboza this time got onto top position, tried to get an anaconda choke, but Amerikani was able to get out of it and get up on his feet. It was just a great round for Barboza, just showing his lethal striking. It's not only his legs, it's his hands as well. And that straight right, no lead up, no loading up or anything. He disguised it so well. And it just caught Amir Khan. 10-8 round for sure for Barboza. Third round, very similar to that first round. It was very back and forth. But it's just Barboza all the way, landing some nice little left hooks that just cracked the chin again of Amir Khan. He stayed up on his feet this time, but he knew that he had to get a finish in order to win. Couldn't get it. And now Barboza gets his first win in the new weight class. This man is going to be a real problem in this 145-pound division. But again, his performance did not surprise me because he is that skilled. Yes, he lost, ended up losing to Paul Felder. He lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov. But those guys are real challenges, you know? So now that he's got fresh blood, he's got some new goals and new momentum in this new division. I'm excited to see what he can do. He lost his first fight in this 145-pound weight class against Dan Ige. A lot of people thought that was controversial as well. Didn't get beat down or anything like that, but this really is now his new home, and he's getting accustomed to that weight class. So we will see who is next for Edson Barboza, but I cannot wait to see him back in the cage. All right, moving on to the fourth segment. We just talked about Edson Barboza and how we weren't surprised by his performance. Now I kind of want to segue into figuring out who's the fighter that we need to shine a spotlight on them because they haven't been talked about enough. And this segment is actually called...
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that? You know damn well who I am. Who the fuck is that?
Conor McGregor saying, who the F is that guy? And in this segment, that guy is Tom Aspinall, the heavyweight fighter that is 2-0 in the UFC now. And he got his victory last Saturday against Alan Baudot. Great matchup. It only lasted 1 minute and 35 seconds. That's how quick Tom Aspinall works. This man he had to deal with a lot of the strikes and the spinning stuff that Baudot was able to throw. Early on in that fight, Baudot was already kind of throwing some spinning back fists, trying to catch Tom Aspinall off guard, but Tom did a really good job. Nice little calm pace. Again, trying to download and trying to figure out when was the best opportunity to kind of get into the pocket and try to hurt Alan. And so Aspinall, again, was just kind of seeing and throwing a couple feints, trying to figure out the head movement of Alan Baudot as well. And then finally, we get to see them kind of interact along the cage after Aspinall corners Baudot, and he just lands a nice little right hand that stung Alan. Alan tried to throw a nice little back or an up elbow, doesn't land on Tom Aspinall. And then as soon as he starts landing a few more punches, Aspinall changes levels, gets the double leg takedown, and immediately pulls Alan down to the ground. He jumps into full mount, and from there was no escape for Baudot. He ended up getting TKO'd with ground and pound strikes, some nice elbows by Tom Aspinall. He makes quick work, and now Tom Aspinall is 9-2 in his MMA career and currently 2-0 in the UFC. I mean, combined in his two fights in the UFC, he's only fought a total of 2 minutes and 15 seconds, really. I mean, he's just making really good work of these challengers that he's kind of facing off of. So we'll see if he gets to fight one more time in 2020. I'd be very interested to see who they can put him up against. I have an idea in the later segment that I want to talk about, but let's shine a spotlight on Tom Aspinall. This heavyweight, again, is new evolution to this weight class. You're starting to see more heavyweights that have a lot of either good speed or a lot more technical, like last week, Carlos Felipe being very technical in his matchup against Jorgen De Castro. Now we're seeing guys like Tom Aspinall who are just kind of pacing. They're not just going to throw bombs and try to get you out of there quick. No, he's very skilled. He wants to figure you out, see where you're going to make a mistake, where your head movement is going with these feints, and then find a good opening to kind of get you and drag it to the ground and just maul you. So great job by Tom Aspinall, who stays undefeated in his UFC career. And we'll see who is next for him, and maybe I'll mention it in the next segment as well. And now we move on, guys, to the final segment. This is where I get, biased. I choose a couple of fighters from the main card, and I try to decide who's next for him. Who do I want to see them fight in the segment that I call...
It's a whole little ball game when they get hit by me. So I said I'd knock him out in the fourth round, and I knocked him out in the fourth round. You can call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Mystic Mac is the name of this segment, and just like Conor McGregor just said, we're predicting some of these fighters' future in the UFC. So let's start off with the guy I just mentioned in segment 4 in his performance where we were surprised of, or at least we didn't know him, and now we do, Tom Aspinall. Aspinall, the heavyweight that had just got a victory over Alan Badeau. Like I mentioned, he is 2-0 in his UFC career. Still very early, but I'd be very interested to see him face off against an up-and-comer in Juan Espino. He actually fought a few fight cards ago, and he also is 2-0. So 2 young guys in their careers trying to move up the heavyweight rankings. I would love to see that because both guys know how to finish. Espino finishes on the ground. He's got 3 straight submission victories in his MMA career, while Aspinall has 2 straight TKO victories. So both guys are dangerous, and I love to see those type of matchups of who's going to win in this type of battle, of having it win on the canvas or having it win on your feet with your hands as well. So I would love to see that. But again, UFC probably as a business wants to build these guys up. If they really are going to be this skilled and this exciting, they don't want to kill their careers by getting a loss on their record. So there's also Sergey Spivak, who is also a contender in the heavyweight division. He won his last fight against Carlos Felipe, who was actually a fighter that we saw and talked about last week. That could also be another option for Tom Aspinall. But whoever of those is going to be, I am very interested to watch this heavyweight. All right, guys, next fighter I want to talk about is Marcin Tybura. He ended up getting the victory over Ben Rothwell. It ended up being a unanimous decision. But this might sound crazy, but I do want to see Tybura tested against a tough heavyweight. Not saying that Ben Rothwell wasn't tough, because he was. He stayed right in front of Tybura. Didn't even get stumbled or get, he did get stung, but he never got dropped by any specific punch. So I want to see him kind of climb those rankings and face off against somebody that either has a title challenge, at least in their career, or a former champion. And that guy is actually Fabricio Verdum. Verdum got a victory in his last appearance against Gustafsson, trying to welcome him into the heavyweight division. Got him by submission. So I want to see how Tybura can do now against a former champion. How he can try to handle, again, the challenge of not getting taken to the ground. How is the takedown defense? Because Rothwell didn't try to take Tybura down at all in their fight. They were just going to strike face-to-face, toe-to-toe. But Fabricio has the skills to not only beat you with his hands, but also beat you on the canvas with his jiu-jitsu. So I'd be very interested in how Tybura can handle a guy like Fabricio Verdum. And getting a victory over Verdum can shoot you right up to the rankings and maybe into the top 10 as well. All right, guys, next guy is the guy we were not surprised of in the segment that I mentioned earlier, is Edson Barboza. He's now 1-1 in the featherweight division. Again, that first fight against Dan Ige, a little controversial, but hey, that's on his record now, 1-1. But he finally got this victory over Amir this past Saturday night. Clean straight rights that were just a beauty to watch. But he looked better than ever, and now that he's getting acclimated to this weight class, he's only going to get better. The weight cuts are going to hopefully become easier, or at least get more accustomed to doing them. And I want to see him fight some tough challenges. He's getting up in age. Not saying he's old or anything. He's still got plenty of years to fight. And you could see by his performance that nothing's going to stop him from continuing to knock these guys down and hurt these guys with his leg kicks and strikes. So I want to see him against a top 5 contender in the featherweight division. He's earned it already, not only by his ability in the cage, but by his name as well and the guys he's fought in the lightweight division. And I want to see him either fight against Calvin Kattar or Max Holloway. Holloway is coming off of back-to-back losses against the current champ, Alexander Volkanovski. They're not going to give him a trilogy matchup. So why not take a break from that and fight against a guy that is just a crazy striker and dangerous striker like Barboza. And Max Holloway is no joke either. Holloway is one of the best strikers in the UFC. So imagine seeing a striking matchup between Barboza and Holloway. God, I'm getting pumped just thinking about that fight. So please, UFC, I want to see that. If not Max Holloway, then Calvin Kattar is also an option that is available for Edson Barboza. But my goodness, Max Holloway, what a comeback fight after, 2 tough decision losses against Alexander Volkanovski. Now you're going to face off against a guy he's going to bring it to you in Edson Barboza. So hopefully that is a fight that the UFC can make in the near future. All right, guys, final fighter, and it is Cory Sandhagen. I talked about him in the Hot Balls segment as soon as this Flying Knee KO podcast started, and can't give more props to Cory Sandhagen. Again, I love the fact that there's fighters that either perform a lot better after a loss, or they kind of get staggered. They overthink their situation that they're currently in. They overthink what they should be doing. Not Sandhagen. Even after that first loss, he bounced back, and now he is the number 1 ranked bantamweight in this UFC division. But that does not mean he's going to fight for the title. That's right. And what I love about Sandhagen is that he knows who is next for Petr Yan. It is Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan has to be made. I'm hoping they announce that soon. For some reason, they haven't even booked that fight or sent out contracts for some weird reason. But hopefully it ends up being made at the end of 2020. Hopefully a December fight card. But Sandhagen has 2 options, and he may actually made it easy. He mentioned those 2 names of what should be next for him, and I'm down for both. There's either Frankie Edgar or TJ Dillashaw. That's right. Dillashaw is serving his suspension, but he will be able to come back to the UFC at January of 2021. So I'm totally down to see TJ Dillashaw, former bantamweight champion, face off against Cory Sandhagen. That would be for sure his toughest test to date, because Marlon Moraes is no joke as well, but TJ, former champion, faced off against Dominic Cruz, against Cody Garbrandt, and even against Henry Cejudo, who was a former bantamweight champion. So having to be able to get TJ Dillashaw under your resume as a victory, that would be just bonkers for Cory Sandhagen, and I know he wants that challenge as well. I'm down for both of those, because again, even if he gets a victory over Frankie Edgar, it's another great name to have on your resume as you're moving up the rankings. Well, I mean, he's not moving up the rankings because he's already number 1 contender, but again, it would just be a great name to have on the listing of fighters that you've been able to defeat. So hopefully he's able to get one of those 2, and it sounds like he wants to come back very quickly, especially after he got that sweet spinning heel kick TKO over Marlon Moraes. All right, guys, that was the UFC Fight Night card that was headlined by Cory Sandhagen and Marlon Moraes, and those were the 5 segments that I wanted to talk about. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Again, if you ever want to reach out to me, check out the description in this YouTube video, and you'll see my email there. You can always email me if you have any questions or if you just want to talk. You can always place your comments down below as well. Let me know what you thought of the podcast, of the segments as well. I'll take any feedback just to improve this podcast. But again, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully, if you guys hadn't seen any of the fights, or if you didn't see that knockout by Joaquin Buckley, my goodness, guys, please go to Instagram, to YouTube, and watch that stuff, because, oh, man, it's just one of the most beautiful knockouts, and probably you're probably watching the greatest knockout of 2020 already. Also want to shout out, if you guys are free this Saturday, it's going to be another great fight night. It's going to be headlined by Brian T. City Ortega. He makes his comeback. He's had a 2-year hiatus. His last fight was against Max Holloway for the, not the bantamweight, but the featherweight championship. And he's actually going to face off against Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie. This matchup has been going, I think they were supposed to fight, I believe, last year, and it just fell through. And these guys have some bad blood, all this crazy stuff. If you guys have time, make sure to watch that fight. T-City versus the Korean Zombie. It's going to be such a great main event. Well, guys, thank you so much again for listening. I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys next week for episode 13 of the Flying Knee KO podcast.